Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast. That is, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here on Potomac Watch with Barton Schwame and Bill McGurn. Barton, one data point. Last week in the Pennsylvania primary, 83.4% of Republicans in the primary voted for Trump, but 16.6% voted for Haley. That was 158,000 votes in a primary where Haley'd been out of it for 2 months. And the vote for her was especially large in relative terms in the suburban counties around Philadelphia, Bucks County, Montgomery, Delaware, and Chester counties, which is where Donald Trump lost the election in large part in 2020 to Biden because he had such a lousy performance, particularly in Montgomery County, which is one of the inner suburbs. But in that, all of those collar counties, Trump did better in Philadelphia among African Americans than he did in 2016, but he lost it in the suburbs. Don't you think it would help him to get Haley back in and touting Donald Trump?
Right. Well, it is remarkable that a candidate who suspended her campaign 2 months ago and still get 16% of the vote. I mean, there's always some tiny number of people who pull the lever for a candidate who's no longer in the race. But Haley's pulling in hundreds of thousands of votes. There's 23% in North Carolina, 14% in Ohio, almost 20% in Tennessee. I'm not sure how much of it will help Trump if he simply sort of makes nice to Haley, or even if Haley endorses Trump, which doesn't seem probable. Most of these voters aren't, I'm guessing, voting so much for Haley as against Trump. They're the classic sort of, as you mentioned, the college-educated suburban Republican that Trump struggled to win over in 2020. They're not going to change their minds about Trump. The only question is whether they'll hold their nose and vote for him over Biden in November. That presents, I would think, just to look at it from the other side of the aisle, a golden opportunity for Biden to tack to the center somehow, talk about maybe something other than abortion and, the threat to democracy. I would think, I was sort of going over in my mind before the podcast some things that he could do. Maybe he could come out forcefully against some of the pro-Hamas protests on campuses or against these maniacal protesters shutting down traffic and so on. But honestly, I see no chance that this administration is capable of even the smallest signal of that sort, even a rhetorical one. The White House is, unfortunately, from what I can tell, totally beholden to an array of left-wing activist groups that they're afraid of offending. So where does that leave those suburban non-Trump Republican voters? Without a candidate.
Yeah, I think that's where I would see it. Maybe some of them will hold their nose at the end and vote for one or the other. But I think it's a weakness, real weakness for Trump. And inexplicable to me, Barton, that Biden is making more of an effort to reach out to these voters with actual policies that people would shake their head and say, yeah, okay, all right, good. Well, he's doing that, so I can come around to him. Instead, every policy action, whether it be another massive student loan write-off, a ban on developing oil and gas in Alaska, a ban on LNG exports, liquefied natural gas export projects. All of their policy focus is on ginning up the Democratic base. That seems to be what they're going for. It's a replica of the 2020 campaign, I guess. I mean, at least then, they did say we're going to bring the country together. Now they're not doing that anymore. Let's listen to Joe Biden with his homies, as I said, the Washington Press Corps, the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner, where they all dress up and listen to the president and give themselves awards and listen to a comic. And Joe Biden is doing what he does just about every time he has a chance to, which is taunt Trump. Let's listen.
I had a great stretch since the State of the Union, but Donald has had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. What the hell? Trump's so desperate he started reading those Bibles he's selling. Then he got to the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. That's when he put it down and said, this book's not for me.
Not a bad line on the Bible, Bill, but you had to write for events like this. What strikes me is very little self-deprecation in the president's remarks. Some joking about age, but mostly just ripping into Trump.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Biden is capable of self-deprecation, and it's fine to attack Donald Trump, I think. But often he seems to not distinguish between Trump and Trump voters, alienating them. And I think, look, at the press corps, he's speaking to his constituency. There's probably no more loyal Democratic constituency than the White House press corps. And we all know that. And so it was a safe audience for him. But, you know, we mentioned suburban women for Trump. But if you look at the polls, Joe Biden is losing support among key Democratic constituencies, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and non-college Americans, and even women. Trump is not necessarily winning in all those, but he's sapping the usual Democratic majority. So I think Joe Biden is underwater with a lot of those groups. He has legitimate enthusiasm for them. I'm not sure abortion is going to do it. If you're an auto worker in Michigan, a swing state, I'm not sure the abortion message is going to do it. You know, when they look at your green program that's putting the cars they make out of business. So I think they both have their challenge, and partly is because the demographics of each party seem to be shifting a little. The Republican Party is becoming more blue collar. The Democratic Party is becoming more elite. So there are people caught in the middle. I agree with Barton in this sense. I think the protests on campus and stuff would be an easy target for Joe Biden. I think Bill Clinton would have used it in a heartbeat. Attack them to build up your support with normal Americans. These protesters have made no effort to appeal to the American people. What do? They block traffic. They block entrances to airports, prevent people from getting where they want to go. They're so obnoxious. I don't understand why Joe Biden is so unwilling to offend them. They're not unwilling to offend him. You know, they carry genocide.
Genocide Joe has got to go.
And there's no genocide Trump things. It's amazing to me. And I don't think they're Biden voters. I don't know that they're really voters to begin with. But I think that if he came out forcefully against them, in other words, for the rights of the community, they have a right to their views, but not to disrupt the lives of their fellow Americans, I think that would make Joe Biden look a little strong, but I don't think he'll do it at all because I think he's afraid of having the pro-Palestinian crowd turn on him completely.
Barton, last word. Where do you think the presidential race stands now? If the election were held now, would Trump win?
Quite possibly, yes, simply because he is very distracted with these trials. And so that means he's not saying very much. And, you know, not to be flip about it, but really, the more voters hear from Trump, the less they like him. But they did like the years of his presidency better than the ones under Joe Biden. And I would just add that I don't think it's a good look for Joe Biden to taunt Trump about the trials. To the average voter, I'm afraid that may look like the president relishing that the law is going after his opponent. And that was pretty gross to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a mistake. But to your point about voter recollections about the different presidencies, in the CNN survey that came out on the weekend, voters were asked whether they thought Biden's presidency has been a success or a failure. 61% said failure. 39% said success. And they were asked the same question about Trump's presidency. 55% said success. Only 44% failure. Some of the analysts say, oh, well, this is nostalgia for the Trump presidency. I think it has much more to do with their comparisons between the Trump economy and the Biden economy and inflation. But it's a notable, I think, poll result that's buoying Trump vis-a-vis Biden. And to answer my own question, Biden, I think if the election were held today, I think Trump would win. But 6 months is a long time. We'll see what happens over these many months. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your being here. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're here every day on Potomac Watch. And please, we hope you're with us every day as well. Thanks for listening.